Mad at me. Okay. So this is, of course, your NFHS book. All of the coaches have access to the app. If you don't have access to the app, you really need to get that immediately. It's already been pushed out to your athletic director. You go onto your phone, either Apple or Android, and you download the NFHS rules app. And then typically you would have to pay $6 to log into it, but we've already paid for that. So you have an email address and a password that's been sent to your athletic director. So it doesn't matter if you've been coaching for 1 year or 20 years. It's not actually knowing the rules. It is knowing the rules, pardon me. It's not your knowledge of the rules that is in question. Most of you already know all the rules, but it's also a huge liability if you don't have this. So, and I can tell you from personal experience, having been contacted by lawyers for injured athletes wanting to know how we get the rules in the hands of the coaches. So even if you are well-versed in the rules and you know the rule book backwards and forwards and you're up to date on the rule changes, you should still have a copy of this book, either in a print or digital format, to cover yourself if, God forbid, someone gets hurt. So everyone on this call, everyone listening to this recording has access to this rule book, either in print or in digital, and you should always have the up-to-date copy with you in some form or fashion. So these are all the technical rules. These are the stroke rules, the technical playing rules that we've adopted from the NFHS. And that's what is in that book. This book is the handbook that your athletic directors live by. So these are our bylaws and policies. So this is what tells you how many meets you have to participate in during the season, which is 5, not 4, changed several years ago. This is what tells you when the district planning meeting has to be done. This is what tells you that you can't participate on a Sunday. So all of the rules that apply to every sport are in this book. And this, your athletic director has this, and it's also online. And I'm going to show you where you can find it, because that will be the third set of rules that are specific to swimming and diving. So this is our newly revamped 2 years ago FHSA website. This is FHSA.com. This is no longer an administrative site. You will not find the dive sheets posted here. Forms that we used to push out on this are not here anymore. This is more geared towards your fans and your parents and just general information that everybody needs to know. So on the swimming and diving page, there's this menu over here that says More Plus. And if you click on Rules and Publications, you will find that red handbook that I just showed you, the administrative procedures. These are things that are specific to running a state series event. And also the swimming, they're in here somewhere. Back up one more. The swimming and diving sport manual. So these are the FHSAA rules that are specific to swimming. Some of the NFHS rules that we did or did not adopt are all in here. Things about exception reports are in here. If you've never read through this, it's a good read. We look at this every year and keep it as up to date as possible. We try and eliminate things that are duplicated or things that contradict what's in either the NFHS rule book or the red handbook. This also has a very long list of ways for you to work with swimmers who have disabilities. So if you have a swimmer with a disability, all of those things that you need to know are in this document. And then things that are specific to our state series events, our district and regional events. So that's in the sport manual, part of our administrative procedures. Like I said, if you've never read through that, I would suggest taking a gander through it. There's some good information in there that answers a lot of the questions that I get from year to year. So that was that. If you have any questions about where to find a rule, if you're not sure if it's in the APs or in the red handbook, please let me know. I'm happy to point you in the right direction. The other thing that I wanted to go over with you, I've gotten a lot of questions about, and rightfully so, is the minimum participation requirement. So as of today, Teams have to participate and individuals. There are two separate requirements. There's one for the team, and then there's one for all the individuals on the team. So as of right now, everyone and all teams have to participate in 5 meets in order to be eligible for districts. However, we are very cognizant of COVID and what is happening in our schools. There are things may have started out okay in August, but have quickly gone downhill, and we recognize that. We, as a staff at the State Association office, don't have the authority to remove that minimum participation requirement. Our board of directors has to do that. So they meet a week from Sunday on the 26th, and there's already been an item submitted to review that and potentially lift that minimum participation requirement. So our board of directors is made up of current athletic directors, principals, board members, superintendents. They have a pulse, their finger on the pulse of what is happening, because they are experiencing what you guys are experiencing out in the communities and in the schools. So my instinct is that they will probably lift it. I can't say for sure, but it is definitely going to be reviewed. If it does change, your school administrator will get an email blast from us probably quite immediately, either late Sunday or early Monday morning, letting you guys know about that. And I will email all of the coaches, and I will do my best to help get the word out as well. So currently, as we stand today, plan on 5. If that changes, and I think that it will, then I will let you know as soon as I know, which would be on the 26th or 27th of this month. All right, so we are going to move on to logos. This question seems to crop up every year. Let me share this so I'm not just looking at myself. Sorry, I have a lot of windows open. Okay, so logos on suits. This hasn't changed. They modified the language in the rule book maybe 3 or 4 years ago, but the overall rule has not changed in several years or at all since I've been around. I don't know how long it's been like this, but suits are allowed to have one manufacturer logo, which can only be 2 1/4 square inches. And the piece that they added a couple years ago was that no dimension can be longer than 2 1/4 square inches. And that's measured out of the box. Nobody under any circumstances should ever measure a logo while a student athlete is wearing a uniform. So don't do that, and don't let that happen. That's not okay. The FINA approved, I think some of them are green check marks and some of them like barcodes. That is not a manufacturer logo, so that doesn't count. So the manufacturer logo is obviously Nike or TYR, whoever makes uniforms, Speedo. Suits can have one American flag, also no bigger than 2 1/4 square inches. They cannot have flags from other countries, just an American flag. Your school logo, it doesn't just have to be the logo. It can be anything school related, school name, school letters, logo, mascot, anything that's related to your school. If that logo, mascot, what have you, is sublimated into the material and therefore 100% water permeable and air permeable, there is no size limit. That 9 square inches is for post-construction added whatever, letters, school name. So that vinyl stick-on that is not permeable to water and air, that can only be 9 square inches. If it's woven into the material, it can cover however much of the suit that you want it to cover. Commemorative patches, this came up in an email earlier this year or this season. I don't have a problem with commemorative patches as long, I think they can only be 4 square inches. So as long as they meet the size logo, they do have to be approved by our office. So if you're having caps made for, in remembrance or in support of a cause, they come up a lot in October for breast cancer awareness, not a problem. 4 square inches, send me a picture. You have to have written approval from our office in case an official asks for it. And if you see one and you ask for it, the coach should have an email from me approving said logo. If they don't have it, obviously just make them turn the cap inside out. They can email me right there on deck. We can take care of it. There's no long process with forms and all that. It's just picture of the logo, make sure it meets the size requirements, and then you get written approval from our office. Melissa, anything you want to add about that?
Joe just posted on there about temporary tattoos, and I mentioned to him right after Olympic trials that yes, temporary tattoos are okay as long as it's your high school name, the abbreviation of your high school, or your logo, and temporary tattoos are fine. As long as it's not something that's unsportsmanlike or derogatory to another team, that's fine. Thanks, Joe.
We get a lot of people that write their heat lane, whatever, on their arms. Like, people write on themselves a lot. One time in all of the years that I've been doing in this particular role, one child had a curse word written on his back, and his athletic director took care of that immediately. So it is rare. I know kids think that they're funny, but if you do get someone that puts something inappropriate on their back, please do not accost the child. Please go to the coach. And if it's not taken care of, don't let me handle it. And we'll get into that with when we talk about unsportsmanlike conduct and ejections. Okay, so moving on to attire. Like I said, suits with mascots or designs that are in the weave of the material are fine. There's no size limit on that. Wearing 2 caps is fine as long as both of them are compliant with the NFHS rules, which means only one manufacturer logo. It can be on either side, doesn't matter, but it can only have one. Lots of kids their parents may order them a suit and it comes from overseas with 2 logos on it. They can Sharpie that out. That's not a problem. If you discover an issue with a suit, you think the logo's too big, it's inappropriate, whatever the issue is, please do not approach the swimmer. That was a change that was made in the NFHS rule, I think 2 or 3 years ago. Do not approach the swimmer. Go to the coach. And then if the coach doesn't handle it, let me know and I'll take care of it. But don't approach the student. That's the wrong protocol now. Anything else about that? Melissa?
Nothing showing up in chat, and I'm good with what you had to say.
All right. I'm actually going to turn it over to you to do the NFHS rules.
Okay. So one of the rule changes this year, what about caps with school logos on both sides? It's fine. No problem.
School logos on both sides is fine. It's just the manufacturer logo that there can only be one of.
And if we explain the logic to you a little bit about this, the point is they don't want to turn amateur athletes into billboards. And that's the whole issue. That's why there's the size restriction and the number of logos restriction. That's all it's about. So if you keep that in mind, then that helps solve all the other issues. All right, so the NFHS came out with a whole bunch of new rules this year, a lot in diving. I personally don't understand much about diving, but I think it's wonderful to watch, but I have no idea what's going on. So I'm really only covering the NFHS rules. And as Kelly knows, this particular rule, 325, is a pet peeve for me. Poor Kelly has to deal with me all the time on this because I personally feel that the NFHS rule book contradicts itself in some different ways on relays. So this is it. This is the definitive answer. At the start of the event, the heat is the long whistle. The relay card must be delivered to whomever it is that you're delivering it to. Are you bringing cards to the blocks? If that's the case, it has to be there before the heat begins. In other words, swimmer number 4 can't be running off to go find the coach in the relay card while swimmer number 1 is on the blocks. That doesn't work. So the whole team of the 4 swimmers must bring that relay card to the blocks. It has to have 4 names on there. Prior to the long whistle, that coach can run up and say, I've changed my mind. I want to switch swimmers 2 and 3. 3 is now going to go in the second place, and swimmer number 2 is going to go in the third place. That is okay as long as it's before the start of the event. And actually, it can take place at any point in that heat. But the point is that card with accurate names must be brought to the block. If it is not, it warrants DQ because it's an inaccurate relay card. All names must be listed and in the order they swim. The reason that all 4 names have to be there is because it prevents over entries and is not just for record keeping purposes as it states in the NFHS. I'm not sure what they mean by record keeping purposes, but Kelly and I have tried ever so hard to get them to understand that 4 names have to be there if somebody's in 2 individual events and can only swim 2 relays. It's not just for record keeping purposes for a high school to say, hey, this team just was our best ever at the 200 free relay. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to put all the names into high tech and to know if there are over entry issues, which are, if a swimmer is in 2 individual events, they may only swim 2 relays. If they're in 1 individual event, they can swim 3 relays. If they're in no individual events, 3 relays. If they're a diver, they can swim in 3 relays. So that's how we track over entry issues. So that's a big question. If you have questions about that, put it in chat. We'll answer that. Distance counters. This was a new interpretation for me that I had never heard before and warrants bringing it up to you, which is one of the main reasons why we decided to do this, is because Kelly and I heard this and we're like, oh my gosh. In Rule 344, a lap counter aiding a swimmer. And how they might aid a swimmer, suppose instead of counting 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and so on, or 17, 16, 15, 14, and so on, so increasing or decreasing the numbers, what if they put in there what their split is? That is considered aiding a swimmer. And if that happens, all swimmers of that team in that heat are disqualified. So we'll say that Gator swim team has swimmers in lanes 1, 3, 5, and 7, and lane 3 decides to do a creative counting method, then all of them, 1, 3, 5, and 7, are all disqualified. That relies a lot on the officials on deck to pay attention how the counters are counting. So think about that as you're handling these events. Okay, I didn't see all of this.
That's okay. I got it.
Okay.
Can you explain what a split is? This is a new coach question.
Oh, okay. A split is, so say it's a 500-yard freestyle. A split is just that time that they swam the last 50 yards. So say they swam the 50 yards in 23 seconds, and instead of putting in, they're now on lap 9, they put it in 23, then that's considering aiding the swimmer because you're telling them what their split is. No, it does not include movement of the counter because we did bring this up on the call.
Right. We tend to let timers vet the relay swimmers' names and positions. Is this still the case?
Times and positions?
We tend to let the timers.
Are you talking about whether which lap number they're on? No, that's the role.
This is about relays.
Oh, relays. Okay, let's stay with distance counters for a second, then we'll come back to relays.
Okay.
Were there any other questions about the distance counting?
Positioning and movement, you already got that one.
Movement is not. So I know that sometimes up and down means hurry up. This means, okay, you're a little bit ahead of time. This means you're okay. No, that was not it. It was when you're specifically doing something to help that swimmer. It could even be that you hold a lap counter so far out and keep it out there that they turn against the lap counter and not against the end wall.
Oh, crafty.
Okay. Does that help? Are there any questions? I'm trying to.
Only one person, correct. Only one person.
Correct. Only one person could be at the turn lane. You're right. Anything else on that? No. Okay. So just so that you know, everybody in that heat would be disqualified. So I hope that's understandable. If there are any other questions, we'll cover those at the end, and I'm just going to keep moving through this. One of the interesting little things that I noticed in the rule book 533, there was a situation that said if a swimmer is a no-show, go ahead and reseed it. Well, if you're about to start the event, do not reseed it. Do what you can to keep that that flow going of the meet. Only reseed a heat when you know far enough in advance that you can contact all the coaches and all the swimmers in that event that there is a reseed, or otherwise you're gonna create your own issues. You're gonna create your own problems. Those were the highlights. Okay, Tom Ward. Oh, let me click on it before it goes away. Tom Ward says, if a counter falls into the water, can the ref allow entry to retrieve the card without any aid to the swimmer? Okay, here is a very good point. A swimmer may not enter the water without the referee's permission. So if a counter falls in, one of my pet peeves, the folks in Stewart know this all too well, is that I like to have extra counters out there so that if a counter falls in the water, somebody can run over and give the counter to them. I've also seen at the state meet and also district and region meets that side-by-side ladies will help each other to put the counter in the water. But that swimmer can jump in, but only with the referee's permission, Tom, and they would not be penalized for doing something like that. That's not aiding a swimmer. But thank you for that question. Does that help?
Helps me.
All right. Okay. All right. Any other questions about any of these issues? There was one you said that was about relay names.
Yeah, and it was from Dave Weller.
Okay, Dave, we tend to let the timers vet the relay swimmers' name and positions. Is this still the case? Yes, absolutely. So by the time the long whistle goes, they're in the water. Usually by that time, a coach is all good. They've decided what they're doing. There are also occasions, believe it or not, where some of our high schoolers come to the blocks and they forget what order they're swimming in. That's never the case in the medley relay, but it can sometimes be the case in the free relay. And yes, the timers vet and the timers clarify. Anytime somebody has an issue with the relay card, raise your hand, flag it down, solve it before that heat goes into the water. We at States and the meets that I do, I carry extra blank relay cards so that if something happens, they wrote it in a pen that smears in the water, that we can write it over again and there's no penalty to that team. So think about doing that. I mean, at the end of the day, we're here to help the swimmers and the teams, not to punish them, but they do have a responsibility. So think about that. All right, Griffo, does it also include moving counters in different directions? No, it does not. All right. Any other questions?
Nothing's come up.
Not that I can see. All right, so continuing on here. So last year it was a little bit interesting, and I requested a lot of data from you because I wanted to find out how many officials were actually showing up at meets, if there really was a huge issue trying to get officials to attend meets, how we were doing with that. And we got to the state meet, and there were far more, and a lot of this I blame on COVID, because kids weren't in the water for the regular season. Sometimes districts was their first meet, and and there was a lot of what I would call silly mistakes that made it all the way to state championships. And we started talking about that in one officials briefing, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to pull all the DQs from all the district, regional, and state meets and take a look at it. And what I found was really pretty interesting. 2 district meets had absolutely no DQs in the system, no DQ codes in the system. So we had no idea what the disqualifications were for, and yet there were 15 DQs. That really becomes important, as we're going to explain later on, when it comes to sportsmanship violations or attire violations, or maybe they were a no-show and somehow got put in as a DQ and shouldn't have advanced. So when we do those webinars at the beginning of the district meet that includes Adele, that's when those DQ codes are really important. It helps give us an idea of what we, Kelly, Adele, and myself, need to be following up on. There were so many meets that had only 1 or 2 DQs, no codes, and that really stunned me. So was it an entire violation? Did the person who was running high tech not know how to code that? That was quite interesting. So I don't know what the issues were there. And that could have gone into the body of the email. And so at the end of last year, Kelly, you know, I will be honest, I thought I don't need to see all the emails that come from districts and from regionals. And my email box is full enough. And so at the end of last year, Kelly and Adele and I decided, well, maybe Melissa, you should take a look at some of these. You should be included on some of these, so we know exactly, should that a person have been disqualified or not? What was the situation? And so I will fill up my email box, and you know, if there are DQs without a code and we're not sure what the issue was, you know, yes, I will be following up with you to make sure the right people advance, the right swimmers advance to regions and to states. 14 meets had only 2 or 3 DQs. It was evenly split between districts and regionals, same size officiating staffs, and I will tell you, only one meet had 1 official. The bulk of it went anywhere from 6 to 15 officials. So that was awesome. We know the meets are being well officiated when you have 6 people on deck. And I know it's difficult to get those officials. I've just been doing that myself. But when there are meets that only have 2 or 3 DQs, especially at districts when we have a lot of novice swimmers, that sends up some question marks as well. The only 15-meter call was at states. So I was wondering, is that position even covered on deck? Do you have enough officials to be able to cover 15 meters? Are the pool decks well marked? So that was another question. You'll see this later in the backstroke. Delay initiating a turn or a pull is not a high school disqualification, yet it was in one of the DQ codes. So that sent up another red flag. And we'll go over some of the differences between USA Swimming and high school rules. And maybe that was just an issue of a call came in and the person running high tech didn't know how to code it, so just put that in, and that was okay. Several, I want to say 3, but we'll see that down below. Unsporting conduct. And when that happens, forms have to be sent in to Kelly. She's going to go over that more because details on that are really important.
Right. So, okay.
Go for it. Do it now.
Okay. So I don't know how many officials are aware of this, but if a swimmer violates one of the, behaves in an unsporting manner, you have the right to eject them from the meet. If you eject somebody from a meet, and not so much, I know that there's like shaving on deck is an unsporting conduct, or deck changing is an unsporting conduct. If they don't get ejected from the meet, then you don't need to do this. This is only if someone gets ejected from the meet, which to my knowledge, has not happened. I've received one unsportsmanlike conduct form, and it was for a kid who got out of the water and threw his goggles on the deck because he was mad. Other than that, I believe they tend to be well behaved. I almost had to eject one coach from the state meet, which was fun. But I have personally filled out unsportsmanlike conduct violations against coaches. So if you're officiating a meet and there is a coach who is really not behaving like a coach should behave, you have the right to eject them and ask them to leave that meet. And then there is a form, I think it's on Arbiter, I'm not really sure. It's called an AT6, and that gets sent to our office. And then there are fines and suspensions and things that go along with an unsportsmanlike conduct violation. So if a swimmer or a coach is behaving in a manner that is not supportive of the meet, if they are not willing to change their behavior or their behavior escalates, you have the right to eject them from the meet, and they must leave. These are rules that apply to all sports. This is something that is in this red book that your athletic directors all have. They have to leave. They cannot stay. And they are penalized further than just missing the meet on that day. But if it ever gets to that point where you have to ask someone to leave, you have to fill out an AT6 unsportsmanlike conduct form. Some of you may also have used them in the past. There are miscellaneous forms when weird things happen, like the lights go out at a meet, and you just want to let our office know that this weird thing happened. There was an AT6 miscellaneous form. It's the same thing. I'll have to find out where the form is actually located. Because it's mostly used by officials, I believe it's on Arbiter, but I'll have to check. I'm glad to say that I don't know. So, but I know that athletic directors can also access it, which makes me believe it is also on home campus.
Any other questions about that issue? And details are really important, yes. As I learned.
Yes.
You can write a novel, but details are really important. Okay, so here we go into the nitty gritty of my fun time looking at all the DQs. And I want to credit Adele for sending me all the information. It took her a lot of time, but when I highlight things in orange, that's when, or peach, whatever that color is, that's when I really want you to take note of that. At States last year, we had 17 early takeoff violations. I know it's COVID. I know there are issues with people just, with swimmers being able to have the time in the pool and maybe even just having the opportunity to do relays. That didn't occur a lot. But that was maybe over 4 days, maybe we get 6 or 8. We had 17. So that was something, and I'm putting this information out there, not just for officials, but also for coaches. That was an incredible number of DQs that we had.
And they weren't close. Some of them weren't close. Some of them weren't close. They I could see them up in the tower.
Yeah. And it was a huge number. I mean, anyway, that's unfortunate, but I'm putting down there all the DQs. I hope you can understand. I mean, I'm sure all of you can understand. This is all, I'm trying to fit everything onto a page. So pass vertical, they come in the turn. There were 8 of those. Pass vertical towards a swimmer finish. That means they turned over to their breast to finish. There were a lot of those in districts. Multiple strokes, they turn over to their breast and take more than one stroke to get them into the wall. There were 21 of those at the districts. They come off the wall. They're not on their back. They're on their breast and they turn over. No touch at all. Submerged at the swim finish, meaning they come into the finish and they're underwater. Toes over the gutter, there was one. And then this is where I mentioned to you the delay initiating turn, delay initiating pull. That was a code at regionals. That is not a disqualification. I'm going to go over that later when we talk about the rule differences as they apply between USA Swimming and high school swimming. But delay initiating turn, delay initiating pull is not a disqualification in high school swimming. Breaststroke, one hand touch at districts, 26 of them, okay. You can see all the rest, non-simultaneous touch, no touch. They were out of cycle, scissors kick, butterfly kick. That stunned me how many there were. And actually it is this number, the 5 that we had at States. And to be honest, from where I stand, I could see far more than 5. That is something for the coaches to notice, in particular, is that there seems to be a lot of butterfly kicking at the end where the feet come together. There's a butterfly kick. So we wanted to make the coaches in particular aware that that was going on quite a bit. We don't have people walking stroke. I don't have folks walking stroke at State either, because I can't do it equally on both sides, right? So I can't have just one person walking stroke along lane 1 who can never see lane 8 but can see lane 1 clearly. That's not fair to the lanes 1, 2, or 3 folks. But when there are that many turn officials seeing butterfly kicks during the breaststroke at States, that's an issue. Alternating kick, hands past hips is after the pullout. If they're continually, their stroke is taking their hands past their hips. Butterfly, nothing there really struck us as amazing. Underwater recovery, yeah, that's a high number, but you know, if at districts you're unaware of what underwater recovery is, you're coming into the wall and you scoop back under, your hands scoop back under to touch the wall, then that's a disqualification. Freestyle, not too bad, only 4 disqualifications. As you'll see in the IM, we're going back to a lot of backstroke calls, not on back off the wall during the turn, pass vertical at the finish. So a lot of that could be that they're doing a flip turn instead of finishing on their back. And so again, I highlighted that as something for the coaches to notice, that maybe your IMers don't know they need to finish the backstroke on their back and then turn in any manner desired to start their breaststroke, but they must be on the breast when they start the breaststroke. So that was a fairly high number, but you know, having not done this data before, I don't know if that's unusual. Okay, so here are my other little peach highlights. 9 false starts at States. I can tell you maybe there are 2 or 3 the entire 4 meets. There were 9 this time, so that was a pretty high number. We did have a 15-meter violation. Of all of the data I looked at, that was the only 15-meter violation. I don't know whether, you know, everybody has the opportunity to cover that 15-meter mark, but you know, to the benefit of all the swimmers who are competing and advancing, it's important to make sure that 15-meter mark is covered if you can. And that means the default marking has to be on the deck. It's not the buoys, it's the default marking on the deck. And it needs to be there on both sides. And as an official, you need to line that up if you're on the 15-meter mark and figure out where your line of sight is for that 15-meter violation in terms of all 8 lanes. And that can be difficult to do. The purpose of that default marking is to get the venue to line up their 15-meter marks on that taped mark, not for you to have to figure out where the violation is. There were a couple of delay of meets. I don't know the issues that surrounded those. So if a delay of meet comes in on a computer and I see that this year, then I'm probably going to call somebody and ask what exactly is a delay of meet. Again, the unsporting conducts, when you charge somebody with a disqualification for unsporting conduct, there has to be additional paperwork that gets filed with Kelly. There was an interference and enter the water without permission. Don't know what those issues were. Those are all kinds of little flags that I would call somebody on just to make sure we're doing the right thing. Any questions about those on chat?
There was I don't know if you remember, I think you might have brought it up, Melissa, like that unsporting conduct could have potentially been like a suit violation.
Who knows?
If it's something like that, then you don't need to do the AT6 paperwork. But if it's something like behavior wise or, something out of control, then we would definitely want to know.
A fight, a slap,
Yeah.
pushing, cursing,
throwing their equipment. Can't do any of those. Bill has his hand raised, but I don't know how to address him. Bill, if you want to type your question in the chat or the Q&A, that would be the most efficient. But I don't see anything else in there right now.
Okay. All right, let's move on, and maybe I'll put something in chat, or you can always send us a text and we'll answer it. So we can scroll down, Kelly.
Do you not see my, what do you see?
Oh, here's a Q&A.
No question.
No question. Thanks. Okay. There we go.
What are you seeing? Because I have the rule difference PDF pulled up.
Oh, I still see. Can I move it down? No, I still see the false starts. Nothing. Same DQs. We still see page 2. Okay, so they're seeing the same I'm seeing. We just need to scroll down further.
Hang on. It keeps pausing my screen share.
You mean Zoom isn't perfect?
Okay, hang on. We want to do the rule change, the
rule differences chart.
This one,
so
right?
There it is. So if you can look in this middle section, there's not a lot that's different. A couple of things. So let's start first with the backstroke, because we had the delay initiating turn and the delay initiating pull. Once a swimmer is under the flags, they may turn over to their breast and kick in or float into the turn. So there's no such thing as delay initiating turn or delay initiating pull. However, if they take more than one stroke, that is a disqualification call. But they must be underneath the flags. They can turn over to their breast and kick or float into the wall to initiate a turn. That would be a disqualification under USA swimming rules if you're doing an observation meet, but it is not in high school rules. So a DIT or a DIP should not come up as a code in those rules. Stacking hands in breaststroke and in butterfly are allowed in high school rules. They are not allowed in USA swimming rules. Again, that would apply to an observation meet. And backstroke ledges are not to be used. They cannot be used. Okay. Those are the big rule differences. Any questions on that?
While we're waiting for questions, I did have Bob Bentz wanted me to address water depth, which is different than what is in the NFHS rulebook. So per FHSAA rules, the water depth across the entirety of the start has to be 5 feet. And there's no exception. There's no gradient. Like you can't have 5 feet in the middle, but 3 feet at like 1 and 2 or 7 and 8. It can't be a graded depth. It has to be 5 feet minimum all the way across the start end of the pool. And there's no exception. There's no leniency on that. That rule has been in place for a very long time. And my understanding is that it is the result of a catastrophic injury. So if the water depth is less than 5 feet anywhere across the start line or starting end, you can still use the pool. You have to start in the water. So that's a hard and fast rule. There's no exception to that. JB, I will get this document posted in Arbiter. He asked if there was if you could get a copy of this chart here.
Yeah, we're going to post this. We're going to post the DQ slip and the relay takeoff slips that have the very pretty FHSAA logo. And those will be posted onto Arbiter. We can't put those onto FHSAA.com anymore. So we'll put those onto Arbiter. And if you ever have any issues trying to get a hold of them, just email Kelly or I, and and or Kelly or me, and we'll get them to you.
They're also for the coaches. I can post this on Home Campus, as well as I have a Dropbox because not all the coaches have access to Home Campus. So everything that I post on Home Campus, which is what I am required to do by my supervisors. So everything I post in Home Campus, I also put in a Dropbox. So that link was sent to all the coaches today. And then I will put this in there in that Dropbox as well.
The other thing that's important to notice, and so Bob just mentioned this about the size of the pool. We submitted two fairly important, I don't know if I want to call them rule changes, Kelly, but we required that any pools used for district regionals must be certified pools. And the reason we did that was maybe last year was in particular, or maybe our eyes just opened up wide last year. There were a couple of pools that were used that were less than 25 yards. And when that happens, obviously you get it, the times are not going to be equivalent to those other swimmers advancing, onto regionals or districts because they're swimming in a shorter course. And that did pass. It really wasn't, that one wasn't a difficult one to get through because obviously the coaches on Swim and Diving Advisory Committee got it and they understood it. And then it went on to the athletic directors and board of directors and they all understood. Of course, you have to have.
It hasn't gone to the board of directors yet. Yeah, so it went through obviously the ADA or the Swimming and Diving Advisory Committee passed it. The Athletic Director Advisory Committee passed it. So this December, it will go back to the Swimming and Diving Advisory Committee for a second read. I started doing this and then this school year started looking at how many of the venues we use are already certified. So the Athletic Director Advisory Committee wanted that data before it comes back to them for a second read. And then if it gets approved twice, 2 consecutive years by both groups, then it will go to the board of directors. So potentially it would be in place
next season.
Year. Yeah. And
okay.
I'm looking, I don't see, so Bob's question was how far out from the wall the 5 feet applies. It's definitely not in our APs. It just says water depth at the starting end, no less than 5 feet for all swimming events. Otherwise, it has to be in water. So I don't know if that is in the NFHS rules somewhere. How far out the 5 feet has to go.
It says the minimum water depth of the point of entry for racing starts during practice or competition shall be measured for a distance from the end wall to a minimum of 16 feet 5 inches 5 meters from the end wall. So there you go. There's your answer. It is 272A. 272A.
Melissa, can you explain how to get a pool certified?
Pardon?
Can you explain how to get a pool certified?
Most all of our pools in Florida are certified. However, in order to do that, you need to go to a Bob, what is your title again? You're not just a civil, you're a surveyor. And a surveyor comes out and measures the pool and makes sure that it's minimum 25 yards, but with pads in. Can you have pads at one end, pads at both ends? But a surveyor does that. It can be somewhat expensive, but we understood from Martin Zubero that Episcopal had redone their pool last year, and one of the parents was a surveyor and did it for free. But it's a surveyor who does that and then provides you with a copy of the testimonial, I guess, that it measures correctly. There we go, surveyor or professional engineer with the proper equipment. Bob also has told me before that the equipment can be fairly expensive, so he requests reimbursement just for the cost of renting that equipment. But that's how it's done. Most of our pools are surveyed. If they are remarcited, then it can cost quite a bit. So to get that done. But if they're remarcited, then a pool should build the cost of surveying into the cost of having it redone.
Before you get to Joe's question, there's one in the Q&A that I don't understand.
Okay, let me click over there. Will you go over minimums for deck set for district and regions? There are no minimums. If you're talking about the minimum of number of officials, there are no necessarily minimums. Okay, which brings me to the second proposal that we brought to Swim and Diving Advisory Committee meeting. As I mentioned before, only one meet last year had one official. Every single other meet, at least those who reported to me how many officials they had at a meet, had a minimum of 4. So that's a referee, a starter, and a start-end official, a turn-end official. In those cases, you're not going to get a 15-meter mark person, and that happens unless it's, you know, it's during freestyle, and you pull your start-end official to the 15-meter mark for that one pass. But there are no minimums unless you're doing an observation meet for USA Swimming. And then you must have a USA Swimming meet referee, a starter, and 2 turn officials. And those are your 4 officials that must be on deck if you're doing a USA Swimming observation. I hope that answers the question, Justin. Under chat, explain lane numbering. If you're standing behind the blocks, lane 1 is always to your right. So behind the blocks, lane 1 is to your right. Doesn't matter if it's where the starter is located. If you're behind the blocks, lane 1 is to your right. Any other questions?
I don't see any.
Okay. Do we have anything more on that agenda?
I don't think so. I think that was it. And I just want to make sure that everyone is aware that per FHSA policy, you do have to have the meet referee for your district and region meet does have to be FHSA certified. So we have about 90-ish officials that are FHSA certified that can serve as meet referees for your district and region meet. Everyone else on deck can be volunteers or just USA Swimming certified, up to you, but at least the meet referee does have to be an FHSA official. And the
reason, and I'm sorry, Kelly, the reason for that is if you are the meet referee at the end of the 400 free relay, and if it's being run on high tech, you need to go make sure high tech person has put in all the names in the correct order for relays for all the schools. And then after the 400 free relay, go and run an exception report. And make sure, and this includes dual meets, it includes invitationals and all the rest, that nobody can over enter. It's not fair, especially prelims to finals. You can't do that. We had another interesting question come in today about a dual meet. A big school versus a little school. The little school only had 1 relay team. The big school had 4 relay teams. And the person running the scoring, because the big school took 1st, 2nd, and 3rd in the relays for each of those events, took 1st, 2nd, and 3rd places. That is not the rule. The rule is that you can only take the top 2 relays from each team. So little school should have scored a 3rd place relay on that, regardless if they came in 5th place. They should have gotten a 3rd place on that. You can only score the top 2 relays. Oh, what is Griffo doing here? What is this, a sales pitch or something?
Listening. Joe wants to know if they need an AO.
No, you do not need a certified AO to be there. It can be a person. No, that is only USA Swimming. It is not high school swimming. So no, you're good on that. But you want somebody who knows how to run high tech. I mean, that obviously is an issue after we've shown you all the things that we've shown you. Other questions?
One more thing I was going to say, and I forgot.
I think Griffo is going to give us a commission here for his.
I think we should demand one.
Boy, no kidding. I think a Starbucks for life for me.
I don't see anything else coming in. Oh, do invitational meets count towards the 5 needed for district? Yes. So that is a really good question, and I did mean to bring that up. An invitational would count as 1 meet. So there's a lot of times, a lot of people want to know if dual meets or tri meets or double duels or whatever, how many meets they count for. If everyone in the pool is swimming for the same pot of points, it cut like an invitational where you have multiple teams and everyone's going to be placed 1 through 8 or whatever. That is 1 meet. If you are there with multiple other teams and your team my team swims against Melissa's and we're only scored against each other, and then my team swims against Bob's team and we are only scored against each other, that counts as 2 meets. So it's not necessarily how many teams are there, it's how many teams you are scored against. So if it's you and one other team, but there's 25 other teams there, then it's only 1 meet per every time you're scored against someone else. I hope that makes sense. Hi, Joe. But yes, an invitational does count towards the 5 meets needed for districts. Absolutely. Exhibitions. Thank you, Bob Griffiths. So I know, and we have to be very careful because if you say exhibition to an athletic director, you're going to get chewed out. Exhibition meets are not allowed. It's policy 18 in that red handbook. However, if you are at a meet and you have a non-scoring heat in the 50 free, we tend to overlook that. That is not an exhibition meet. That is a non-scoring heat. So if you add extra event or heats of the 50 free at your regular season dual meet, not a problem. You cannot have exhibition or non-scoring heats at districts or regionals or states. That is not allowed during the postseason. That is only allowed during the regular season.
During dual meets. And you can't call them junior varsity either. So just call them non-scoring heats.
Yes.
Even if the meet is out of the Treasure Coast. I'm not sure if I get that.
I don't know.
Invitationals. It doesn't matter where the invitational occurs, whether it's the Treasure Coast or anywhere else. An invitational is an invitational.
Right. I believe that is all that I had. So if you are not on here live, if you are watching this and you have questions, please email myself and or Melissa, and we will get an answer to you. We are at just about 1 hour, so I want to be respectful of everyone's evening. I don't see any other questions in the chat or the Q&A. Oh, there's the Q&A. So if no one has any other questions, we will go ahead and call it a night. If you are a coach or an official that doesn't typically officiate the postseason meets, Melissa and Adele and I, probably towards the middle of October, right before districts start, we do another webinar for all of our meet admin. And I will send that out to everyone. Like we're not trying to keep anything a secret. We just want to really make sure that we target those specific people that are in charge of running the meets. So if you want to listen in on that webinar, then look for that information to come out probably sometime in mid-October. Adele is currently over in England with her mom right now. So once she gets back, we will establish those dates and get that information out to you. But that one will be more specific to postseason meets and administrative things related to those meets.
High tech. Yeah.
Exception reports, over entries, fun, all that fun stuff. All right, well, we will go ahead and end it there. Thank you guys. Thank you everyone for taking time out of your whatever day of the week this is, evening, to join us. And I hope that this was beneficial to you. And
I think we're all good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone. And we will talk to you soon.
Thank you. Good night.
Night.